All right. Well, hello and welcome. I'm Bess Godin with Millennial Splaining, and today we are joined by Mitch Randall. Say hello, Mitch, and tell us a little bit about who you are and what the organization is that you're with.
Thanks for the opportunity to be on. My name is Mitch Randall. I'm the executive director of National Ranked Choice Voting. You can go to our website at nationalrankedchoicevoting.org. And the idea of what we're trying to do is to stop the duopoly. We're trying to end the duopoly by 2024 by getting national ranked choice voting in place by 2022. And that way we have a democratic voting system we can use for 2024.
Awesome. So I'd like to start sort of from the beginning and give us a good idea of why our current voting system isn't working. And maybe if you could give us an example of how ranked choice voting would work, say if it was used in the primaries and nobody dropped out. So like how would Bernie have won using national ranked choice voting?
Well, I mean, it's kind of it's a bigger story. Can I just kind of
Yeah,
kind of paint out the scope here of what we're talking about?
sure.
So, I mean, we all know there's something radically wrong. I'm assuming we all know that, right? There's, the top 15 policies that people want, like Medicare for all, student debt relief, increased minimum wage. Just you can go all the way down the list. None of those things are on either party platform, the two parties that were on the ballot. And when I say there's two parties on the ballot, actually in Colorado there was maybe 15 presidential picks I could have chosen in my state of Colorado. But we all know that only a Democrat or Republican is going to win. We already know that. So there's something kind of wrong. And if it's a representative democracy, right? So we're supposed to vote somebody in that does what we want, but we vote them in and they don't do what we want. And there's not somebody on, that we know is going to win or know can win that's on the ballot that's going to do what we want. So we're stuck. And we saw it happen in 2016. We saw it happen in 2020. And I do not want to see it happen in 2024. But, this is a bigger issue. And can I just kind of go off here? Because
Yeah,
there's some crazy
absolutely. And I'd like to even point out, building on what you were saying, that it seems to me, as a young person, that every time we've had a new presidential candidate, they've promised us less and less of the things that our polling says that we want, right? I mean, you could say
Yes.
that Hillary Clinton, offered us a little bit more maybe than even Joe Biden is at this point, right? I mean,
Hmm.
that's a weird downslide. So anyway, please continue. Yeah, I think that
Yeah, I mean that it all fits together. So I just did this article with Chris Richards, and to what we did is we went back to, so historically there was the Whigs and the Democrats, and this I'm talking about in the 1800s. And in 1860, Lincoln came in, and then there was Democrats and Republicans in 1860. So that was right around the time of the Civil War. Okay, this is all history. It's almost 200 years ago. It's 160 years ago I'm talking about. That's when we got Democrats and Republicans. And then for the next 160 years, we went through every presidential election and we looked at how many people vote outside of the duopoly party. When I say duopoly, I mean there's the two parties, Democrat and Republican. It's two of them. And we keep having them over and over again. It's a duopoly. It's like a monopoly, but with two, right? So we looked at how many people are voting outside of the duopoly towards, some other party, an alternate party. Guess what the answer is? Out of those 40 presidential elections in those 160 years, 4%, 5% of the people voted outside of the duopoly towards a third party on average. So there's something really wrong. And people say, oh, we have a two-party system. But again, I just told you, like, not on my ballot. On my ballot, there's so many parties and so many people running. But, but that's a confusing thing. I know that only two of those parties can ever win. And that's what we see when we look at that on the last 160 years out of, I don't know how many, 10,000 or whatever, up and down the ballot from city council all the way up to president. I don't know how many elections there were, but we know that some very tiny fraction percent was not Democrat and Republican. So what the heck is going on? So we looked into that, and we went through, a whole bunch of different possible explanations, because people say, we have a two-party system, and they say, they'll say, well, for one thing, we don't have a two-party system, right? There's no law that says it has to be two-party, but there are two parties. So what is it? Is it money in politics? Is it, election fraud? Is it, what could it be? So we went through all those arguments, and the one that really sticks, and none of them really do. For example, election fraud. There's no way we've had election fraud for 160 years. That's not one of the things we do. There's no way that we've had this incredible media bias that we have today. There's no way we had that for 160 years. And, just see over the last 160 years, the exact same pattern in voting all those years. No, that's not what's happening. So the answer is, it's our voting system. And by the way, for people who study voting systems, this is absolutely no surprise. Our voting system is first past the post, single member plurality voting. That's what it's technically called. Well, it turns out that first past the post, single member plurality voting, no matter what happens, you end up with two corrupt, unaccountable parties. That's what it does. And that's exactly what we have seen. And there's just absolutely no question that the reason that we have these two parties for 160 years is because of the voting system. So there's just no surprise there. And when I say that, they're corrupt, unaccountable parties, let me break that down a little bit. So we know, everyone knows, and if you've been voting very, very long, actually, if you're a young voter, you might say, hey, I'm going to vote for the party I want. This third party I like. But after a few election cycles, you pretty much figure out they only got 2%, last time, and they're polling really low, and you start to figure out, oh, well, at least if I'm going to vote, I don't want to, quote, waste my vote, so I'm at least going to try to pick the Republican or the Democrat. I don't like either one of them, but I like this one, I hate this one less than I hate that one. I mean, we all know that strategy, right?
Yeah, and
So
that messaging too has particularly been amplified since 2016, I think, because people have been hearing that, right, constantly from others. Don't throw
yeah,
your vote away, and everything that every time a Republican gets elected, it's our fault, right?
exactly.
Yeah.
So this idea that we know it's going to be a Republican or Democrat, they know that too. So that's why they can become evil. They know no matter what we do, there's no accountability. And one thing that, I'd like to point out, if you don't like your Democrat, you try to vote out your Democrat, you get a Republican. If you don't like your Republican, try to vote out your Republican, you get a Democrat. If you like a third party, vote in a third party, you get a Republican or a Democrat. You're completely stuck. There's nothing you can do. So they know that, and that's where the corruption comes in. So they're completely unaccountable because you can't vote them out. So then the corruption comes in, and it's really a race to the bottom. Though for them, it's a race to the top, because for them, they're working for the donors, and they're going to try to get the best, donors that give them the most campaign financing they can possibly get. And to them, it's this great race to the top, and to capitulate to whatever the donors want, and they don't care what we want as people, because it doesn't matter. We can't vote them out. But to us, it's a race to the bottom. We see them completely ignoring us. We see them getting worse and worse, being completely disconnected from what the people want. So I mean, this is what's going on in America, and it's been going on for 160 years. And to me, the more and more that I got into it, the more and more I'm amazed that this is like the biggest secret in politics, because there it is right in front of your face. Like, we all just went through it in 2020, right? We all just said, oh my God, I don't want to vote for this person, but if I don't, the other person's, the arm twisting. And then if you did vote for a third party, and believe me, not someone who shames. If you want to vote for a third party, though, you got shamed, guaranteed, right? Somebody said, oh, you voted for a third party, you want Trump to win? It's this, it's like when you exercise democracy, you're shamed. I mean, we all just saw it, but does anybody? And it's like a media blackout. Like nobody's saying, "Hey, we have a bad voting system." They're not saying that. So here we are, and we're saying, "Duh, we have a bad voting system." I mean, it's pretty obvious,
Yeah, it's
but just everybody has to become aware of it.
yeah, absolutely. So it's interesting
Yeah.
to me that you say that our voting system is kind of designed to enforce the duopoly. Can you
Yeah.
kind of expand on that?
Well, I got to tell you this. So this is a story that just drives me nuts. So pre World War II, Germany had single member plurality voting, right? And that's how they got Hitler. Hitler actually did not get a majority, right? Hitler got plurality, which means he got less than 50%, but it was more than anybody else. That's exactly the same system we have. So guess what the Republicans and Democrats did after we won World War II? They went in and they made sure Germany had to change their system from single member plurality voting to something that's similar to ranked choice voting.
Really?
So in other words, yeah, so in other words, we forced them, when I say we, I'm talking about the Democrats and Republicans because they've been in power for 160 years. They've done everything. They've been involved in every war. They're behind everything because they're the only ones who've been in power for 160 years, right?
Yeah.
They went in and told Germany you can't use that system. So in other words, and by the way, this same system that we're using. So they would not wish our system on their worst enemy. But of course, it's fine for us. It's fine for us to use to keep them in power for 160 years. So like, I'm telling you, in my mind, I think that should be, that should be a disqualification. Sorry, you don't get to run ever again in America for doing that to us for 160 years. I mean, someone talked me down from that because that's where I've arrived. I can't. People should be pretty mad, I would think.
Yeah, interesting. Oh my goodness. All right, so let's talk a little bit more about ranked choice voting itself. Can you give us a little bit of a breakdown of how it works?
Yeah, yeah. There's actually a really good video out there that I encourage people to look at. You can find it on our webpage, by the way, which might be the best way. But anyway, it's a sticky note thing. But the idea is that when you vote, you don't just say check and you're done for one of the candidates. You actually rank them, right? So you say, actually, let's go back to what you were saying. Let's use this as an example. Let's say in the 2016 election. So in the 2016 election, we had, yeah, what's that?
Tell me about how Bernie should have won. I'd like to hear that, please.
Absolutely. We had we had Trump, we had Hillary, and we had Bernie, right? Well, if we had ranked choice voting, Bernie would not have ran in the Democratic Party. There's a reason that serious candidates try to get into those two parties because everybody knows those are the only ones that are going to win. Duh. So if you want to win, you have to try to get in those two parties. And if you don't, like, if you're going to try to win outside of those two parties, it's not impossible, but it is damn near impossible, right? Because I mean, one thing we say. Sorry, I'm segueing a little bit, but one way how we characterize first past the post voting from that statistics that we did is basically it gives the duopoly parties a 95-point advantage. That's really what it does. So when all those years when they were getting 95% of all the votes, it wasn't because they were so damn good. It wasn't because they were just great. It's because that system, the voting system itself, biases people to vote for them 95 points. Believe me, if that system didn't exist, there would not be Democrats. I mean, it would be a whole different kind of Democrat, Republican, or other parties, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But going back to what I'm saying, let me
It's
go. Let
not
me go
about
to
how much money you pour into it anymore either, right? Because that was an argument during this last run that, Democrats were putting more money and help us out, outraise Trump and everything. And then they ended up losing a lot of the key elections underneath because
sure.
yeah, because they thought money would solve the problem, and in reality, people who I'm thinking of, I can't think of the example right now. Um, Yeah, I mean, but people who had like $1 million budget for
Hmm.
their campaign, went and beat out several $1 million budget campaigns because they went and they did the hard work. So yeah, anyway.
Yeah, well, I mean, people have, so there's a flaw in our voting system, right? And the Democrats and Republicans have exploited it to stay in power. Well, not only exploited it, but they have refined that messaging, and they've found, like hot issues that make people fear the other party. That's what this is about, right? They've weaponized fear. So, when people really vote, I mean, it's more or less voting against candidates more than anything. That's what people are doing. They're voting against candidates. So it's been weaponized. It's been, exploited. They have figured out how to use this voting system to get the results they want, right? So, but let's look at that 2016 thing and say, let's say we had ranked choice voting. Okay, so Bernie would not have run as a Democrat. He even says, I'm not a Democrat, and like he didn't want to do that. He had to do that because that's the only chance he had. So let's say he just ran as an independent, which is what he calls himself, right? So then we had Trump, we had Hillary, and we had Bernie. Now, if it were when I'm voting, I would have said Bernie's my number one choice. So he gets a one, right? Then I would have said, well, I don't like Trump, this is my fear voting. I would have said, okay, Hillary's number two for me. And I probably wouldn't have put number three for Trump. He can not have a number as far as I'm concerned. So maybe I would have said the Libertarian Party or something could win as number three. But so that's how you vote. You vote based on your preference, and there's no strategy to it. There's really no strategy to. I mean, first past the post, the system we currently have is only strategy. It's only like I got to make sure to prevent this by doing this and not waste my vote. And you don't even look at policy because you're just based. It's all strategy, right? But ranked choice voting is 100% opposite of that. It's only what your preference is because there's really no other way to do it, right? So you say like, I want Bernie first, I want Hillary second, and I'm not going to put a number for Trump. And so what happens is when they tally up the votes, they take everybody's first choice, right? And we already saw, by the way, that Bernie head to head against Trump was like 14, 15 points ahead of Trump near the end of the cycle, right? So he would have had more. So actually, he probably would have had more than 50%, and the whole thing would have been done. But let's just say he didn't have more than, let's say he had 48%, and Trump had, 41%, okay? And some people voted for Hillary. So what they do is they take the lowest, the one who got the lowest, which in this example I'm giving would have been Hillary, and they take Hillary's second choice and redistribute that to, and when I say Hillary's second choice, the people that voted for Hillary first, we're going to take those people and use their second choice and redistribute it among. And those people probably would have voted for Bernie more, maybe some of them Trump, but most of them Bernie. And then Bernie would have went past 50% and won. So by the way, with ranked choice voting, there's always a winner who has more than 50%. So the process keeps doing how I described that. It keeps taking the lowest candidate and redistributing those votes until somebody gets more than 50%. So in that sense, it's really fair as well.
Awesome. Cool. All right. Well,
Yeah.
I'm in. How do we make
I mean,
it happen?
the whole thing about this is a system that gets rid of voting strategy and gets rid of this flaw, right? And that flaw is really vote splitting. That's what they call that. Because if you don't vote for one candidate, if you vote for, let's say, your third party, it takes a vote away from somebody else. And then, if your third party doesn't win, your vote just gets tossed in the garbage, right? But in ranked choice voting, that throwing away doesn't happen. So if your first choice doesn't get the best, numbers, they still use your vote to then help who's ever left, So anyway, yeah, it's by far a much better system. In fact, I saw, like Massachusetts had it on the ballot for 2020. I don't know if you know that or your viewers know that. So it was actually, they used referendum, and we're going to talk about that in a minute because that's our big weapon, is to use referendum. So what referendum is citizens can petition, and if they get enough signatures on their petition, they can get their issue on the ballot. And then during the election, then the voters just vote on that. So you can actually, citizens can write their own law, get a petition, put it on the ballot, and then get it voted in, and it becomes the law of the state. So
Yeah,
this is a statewide thing.
I think we
Not
did
all
that in
states can do that.
Jersey. I'm in New Jersey, and we just legalized marijuana. I think we did that with the referendum.
Exactly. So I was going to say that it's a system that works because the states that have gotten, I'm not sure if I'm correct about this, but I'm pretty sure that every state that has legalized marijuana has done it through referendum
Cool.
because typically their politicians were kind of against it. I'm not sure. I shouldn't say, but I think it's something like that, right? Certainly,
I think
many of
well,
the
and this
states.
is just shooting the breeze here, but I think it has a lot to do with the pharmaceutical industry because they are one of the biggest
Um,
contributors to political campaigns, and we never really think about it. But I think that they are the gum in the works for Medicare for all as well as legalization of marijuana.
I think you're right. Yep.
But anyway,
Uh-huh. So I was going to say that. Let's see. I was talking about Massachusetts got it on their ballot, right? And then the people could have voted it in, but actually didn't vote through. And it's because people weren't sure. There was a little, when it gets onto the ballot there, then you have to have your whole population be aware of the issue. And a lot of people are just afraid of change, right? And unless you know that the system is better, it's a problem. But I was going to tell you, I remember Elizabeth Warren, because she's from Massachusetts, right? She said, hey, ranked choice voting strengthens democracy. And when I heard that, I thought, that's like a pilot saying, airplane wings help my airplane fly. You know, to me, the messaging has not been, people aren't really aware of what's going on. People need to know the current system is not, it's either non-democratic or anti-democratic. I'm not sure which one we should say, but it's not democratic. That's a fact.
yeah.
It's got a 95-point bias in it. Who thinks a system with a 95-point bias is fair? There's nothing fair about it, right? But ranked choice voting is actually democratic. So we want a democratic system. I mean, it's patriotic to want that. It's American to want democracy. So I mean, we're apple pie here, right? We want democracy. So what our plan is, to segue into that, because we just talked about how Massachusetts is doing, what our plan is, there's 26 states that have referendum. So we just want to make a national campaign and bring national attention to this issue instead of it being little pockets in each one of those states that are trying to convince their states, the citizens of their states. We want to have a national message with like influencers talking about it, the left screaming about it. I mean, if people really saw this elephant sitting in the room and they understood this is stolen democracy from them, they would be so upset. And we can get this passed easily. We could get it on ballots, and then people would say, hell yes, I want this, because what we have is no good. In fact, let me, sorry, I'm just monologuing, but there's so much to it. One thing that everybody needs to be aware, right? I mentioned it earlier. We have a representative democracy. So you say, you look for a candidate or party, right, that has what you want, and then you vote them in, and then you kind of hope that they do what you want. Sometimes you beg them, or people say, let's move them left, or whatever, the words are. So and by the way, people aren't getting what they want. Like I mentioned before, the top 15 things aren't on neither platform. So everyone should be aware that whatever your favorite policy is, one of mine is Medicare for all. I know 3 people that are on GoFundMe. Well, one of them died, but I know 3 people, that were on GoFundMe. And to me, when I see that, my heart sinks. That's just so disgusting to me, and I can't believe we have a system like that. So Medicare for all is really important to me. Plus, I'm an entrepreneur, so I've been getting my own health insurance for a while. So these arguments I hear about health insurance, when they say people like their health insurance,
Yeah.
or
I don't know
they don't,
anybody who likes their private health insurance. Literally no one.
no one. It's ridiculous. I mean, I pay through the nose for my policy because I'm independent like that. So I mean, to me, that's one of my big things. But there's nobody. I can't vote for anybody who's going to, I could vote for a third party, but I'm cool throwing away my vote. I mean, I know the third party's not going to win. I see him polling at 2%. By the way, I did vote for a third party, but there you go. But anyway, I want to change that because what I'm trying to say is what separates you from the policy that you need, and you can just fill in the blank. Mine's Medicare for all. Maybe some people have student debt that's totally killing them. I mean, all this stuff. What's separating between you and what you need is our voting system, because it's not allowing you to get somebody in there who's going to do what you want. Instead, you have to vote for somebody who's not going to do what you want. So this issue is like, there's nobody in America who this isn't important to, because we all have favorite issues and we're all being ignored. I mean, I'm speaking for 99% of us, right? So I just think that with a national campaign and bringing the attention to it that we should, and not allowing it to be this secret, the biggest secret in politics and the biggest elephant in the room that nobody's paying attention to. If we can just bring that awareness there, I think we can have a movement that's, that we can do this very ambitious plan with ease. That's what I think.
Excellent. I mean,
Yeah.
it's so, I mean, it feels revolutionary to me to hear that, it's not about the money, in our system. It's not about, and I mean, not that those things don't seriously influence what happens. Of course they do. But, I mean, the idea that when we say the system is rigged, and it literally is rigged, not because
Yeah.
it's a metaphor, but because it literally is rigged, I mean, that's a whole, I mean, we don't even know what we're talking about when we say that. It feels like, I mean, it's
Well, I mean, there, people have a lot to say, right? They say like, yeah, let's get rid of money in politics,
right.
or we got to get rid of media bias, or propaganda. We have to get there's a big long list, but there's not very many things that you can actually change.
Right.
Like, how do you change money in politics? Most everything you can think of, that you'd like to see changed, you're asking the people that's benefiting it, to change it, and they're not going to do that unless you can come up with a plan. So this is something really important to me. I actually think this is the only plan we have besides revolution. So let me just describe that a little bit, because you can write down a list, and I've done this actually. I remember the first time I talked to one of our board members, the first conversation we had was we just went through and brainstormed, like, what are all the options that we have to stop this oligarchy and actually get control of the government by the people? Like, what can we do? It is a very short list very quickly. I mean, let's say you want to get money out of politics. That's great. How? What's your plan? It's two things. There's two ingredients to any plan, right? It has to be a transformative policy, and it has to be something that you can do with citizen action. And if it's not both of those things, it falls off the list. And really, I'm at a loss. This is the only one I know. The other one would be revolution. And, the outcome of revolution is actually frightening.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Because, I mean, the problem with the burn it all down, mentality is that you have to build it from scratch again. And then when you build it from scratch again, you realize, oh, it's got a crack over here. Oh, it's got an adjustment over here.
right.
You have this giant empire that's built with cracks on the bottom of it. I mean, you need to,
Well,
I feel the need for revolution. I feel the need to go out
yes.
and scream and have somebody hear my pain and other people's pain. But at the same time, if we, start from fresh every time we have a problem with the system, we're not going to get anywhere. We have to learn to build on it and reform, in a way, reform what we got.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, I think, like, if I was in a militia and I was spending every weekend trying to figure out how I overthrow governments, then I would probably be more favorable to revolution, because I think I'm going to win. But I'm not in a militia, and I don't spend my time thinking about how I'm going to overthrow the government. but there are militias, and I think they're going to win. The question is, do I want them? Do I want them to set up our next system? I'm not so sure.
The ones who just had the Capitol insurrection, right? So,
So, so anyway, revolution's on. It's on the plate. In fact, if breaktheduopoly.org, if that plan doesn't go through, maybe revolution is what's left. In fact, maybe revolution will happen before we can pass ranked choice voting. I can't predict that. I mean, I'm a little surprised we haven't had revolution already because of how people are being treated by the government. It's completely tyrannical. I mean, there's no other way to put it. But so anyway, that I mean, that's the thing that I feel empowered by. I feel like, oh my God, we have a plan that citizens can do. And by the way, I don't see another plan, so hopefully everybody jumps on board this plan because there really isn't another plan to jump on. So I do feel empowered. I think we can do this.
great. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So let's tell people what they can do to help you. Go to the
Oh,
website,
good idea.
sign up.
Yeah. Um, so every Wednesday we do have a national organizing call, and you can sign up for that by going to our webpage. As we were talking about earlier, me and you before this started, we kind of have a split personality with our webpage. You can go to nationalrankedchoicevoting.org, or you can go to breaktheduopoly.org. We kind of push both of those because one of them sounds a little more revolutionary, which fits a little bit better with what we're trying to do. But anyway, go to breaktheduopoly.org, and you can leave your email address, and then you'll get an invite to our weekly meeting. So what we're doing is we're building a movement, and it's a decentralized movement. So the idea is it has a national faction to it, right? There's a small organization, and that's what I'm in charge of, that's going to set the national messaging and set the kind of, not really rules, but the guidelines for local organizations. So your local movement, you can start yourself, and we need one in every state. So we have both, and it's when I say decentralized, what I mean is the local organizations are more or less autonomous, but they understand, they can see, and we publish on our website, the expectations and what we're trying to do, right? How we're trying to approach the problem, what our messaging is, that kind of thing. But it's not like if you want to do something at the local level, you have to go up through some chain of command and get approval. No, on the local level, you're decentralized. You're empowered to do whatever it takes in your state. And every state is a little bit different. And you might decide, I'm going to partner with this organization and we're going to do it this way. And that's all fine. We all have the same goals. We're all trying to get, basically we're trying to get ranked choice voting in place by 2022 using voter referendum. And the part I didn't mention too, by the way, and I'll just throw it in there, but you can see it on it. If you go to our webpage, you will see a video that goes through a little bit more detail. But we call it national ranked choice voting. So a lot of people have heard of ranked choice voting probably, but the word national in it has a special meaning. It's because there's an interstate pact involved. And what that means is let me just say what it means by saying what it doesn't mean. If you had a bunch of ranked choice voting states, let's say all 50 states had ranked choice voting, but not national ranked choice voting, there is still vote splitting in the presidential election because each state puts in their electoral delegates. That system is also first past the post, single member plurality voting for the president. Because as you know, if you get 270 votes, you win. That's how the electoral college works, right? Well, what the interstate pact does, and that's vote splitting. You'd still have to say, well, if I vote for a third party, it's going to take an electoral delegate away from Joe Biden, and then that Trump is going to win. You'd still be going through that same logic. So we have this interstate pact that mixes together the ranked choice voting for president into one conglomerate, right? So in other words, if let's say, just as an example, 2 states are in it, they combine their ranked choice voting results for the president, and then they put all of their electoral delegates towards that winner of that ranked choice voting outcome.
So that's interesting. I hadn't thought about it in conjunction with the Electoral College, but you're suggesting that we keep it or not necessarily?
Well, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the National Popular Vote, because we kind of stole some of the brilliance of their idea. So I don't know if I should go into that, but I'll just say it really quickly. A bunch of states have entered this thing called the National Popular Vote Interstate Pact. And when 270 delegates worth of those states enter that pact, then what they've all agreed to do is they're going to just put all their electoral delegates in the same direction as whatever the national popular vote was. So in effect, nullifies the bad effects of the electoral college and just makes whoever wins the popular vote is going to win all the electoral delegates. So it's that same kind of thing. Like I hope I didn't maybe confuse things more by telling you that system.
I think what you're saying to me is like let's take for example the Hillary Clinton versus Trump election and how
Right.
she won the popular vote, but the Electoral College won it for Trump. You're saying that
Exactly.
would not happen in a ranked choice voting scenario, that all of the interstate pacts would decide, well, since the popular ranked choice vote came out to
Yeah,
Captain X, then we're going with Captain X. Yeah.
that's right. That's exactly right. Because states are in control of how they do their electoral delegates, right? They can do it any way they want. Some states, most states take whoever wins their thing. They take all the electoral delegates and put them that direction, right? That's how most states do it, but some states don't, like Nebraska, and I forget there's another one. Sorry, I forgot, but another, where they just say, no, we're going to split up our electoral delegates depending on what our state did. So, it's up to the states how they do that. And when they signed this interstate pact, they're essentially going to be nullifying the bad part of the electoral college. And it's going to then make the presidential election become, based on ranked choice voting. So that means a third party can win the presidential election. And in my book, that is super important because if in 2024, the winner is a duopoly party, Republican or Democrat, that probably means there's, it always happens in every election. It also affects all the down ballot races. People say, I'm going to vote for the Republican, so therefore I'm going to vote everything Republican all the way down the line, right? So I want, and I hope everybody else gets this, right? I don't want a duopoly party to win the presidential election in 2024. I want it to be somebody completely from outside who's not capitulating to those two parties and all the stuff that is causing those parties to not support anything we want. And then hopefully all the down ballot stuff, they'll be like, and we'll get third parties all the way down. So this word national in front of it is very important, and it has to do with that interstate pact.
That's a very important detail. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that you'd like to add? I think we can kind of wrap.
No, you let me just spit it all out. So.
That's amazing. I didn't even have to ask any questions.
You're embarrassing me. Well, I mean, I just, here's what I think. I'm a Bernie guy, right? Bernie was my hope. Bernie was the candidate that seemed like he wanted everything I wanted, and I could believe him because I've seen, you watch a speech from him 40 years ago, he's saying the same thing. Yeah. I knew he would get in office and he wasn't just lying to us. I knew he would get in office and do what he said. Yeah. And those were the policies I want. Those are the 15 policies I'm talking about. They were Bernie policies. So, I mean, that's how every party should just take the top 15 policies and make them their platform, but they don't do that. But anyway, then when Biden, that whole Super Tuesday thing, all those people, and me included, that felt so empowered. Like, I have to say that when this happened to me in like April or whenever, I actually drove up to a street corner and there was a homeless person there asking money. And it's always so hard for me to have, that eye contact or something. And they say don't give money to homeless people because they're going to use it for, there's all this stuff. And
I say the opposite.
This was the first time in my life when I drove, parked up next to a homeless person, and I actually thought, thank God we're going to take care of this person.
Yeah.
Because all my life I never knew what to do. Like I don't know if I should give money to him. I feel embarrassed. It's a horrible thing, and I know that the solution is not coming from me. That's not how we're going to solve
Right.
homelessness.
Of course.
But when Bernie was running, I thought, oh my God, we can solve homelessness together. Sorry, I'm getting like a little teary, but so all those people like me that had all that hope in Bernie, so the head just got cut right off that movement. And in my opinion, I want to see that whole movement just all back this, because this to me is our only hope left.
Yeah.
And I feel empowered by it. I feel like we can attack homelessness, we can attack, medical bankruptcy, we can attack the 68,000 deaths per year of people who can't afford health care, which, by the way, is the seventh leading cause of death in America.
Yeah.
The seventh leading cause of death in America is that people can't afford.
Badly it's skyrocketed since COVID too, right? I mean, I don't know if there's stats.
Oh, right, because that statistic came before COVID.
Yeah.
But I feel like all those people that had all that energy, then I was at a Bernie rally and I turned to the guy next to me because he said, Bernie said, look at the person next to you and say that you're going to help someone you don't know. Well, now I can, because I felt so lost, after Bernie dropped out, just lost.
Yeah.
But now I can help people I don't know again.
Yeah.
Now we can all come together and get behind this, because we can actually vote in somebody who's actually going to do what we want.
Yes.
And that's so empowering to me.
That's amazing. Yes, absolutely. And you convinced me. I'm totally, absolutely into this.
Yeah.
I would love to see us talk about it more in the national conversation. And I really hope that we can take issues like this as a left community in America, and say,
Hmm.
okay, we all disagree with each other on many, many things, but this issue needs to happen. This issue needs to
Right.
happen. And I really hope this is one of those issues that unites people. I work also with a group called United Left, and that's, those are the issues that we try to unite people around. Ranked choice voting, Medicare for all. I mean, we have we have more to do in common than we have differences, right? I mean, there's so much that needs to be done in the world, but the things that we all agree on are things that we should be doing right now. We should be doing those
Yes.
first, and then we can decide about other stuff later. So I would love to see that happen.
Well, I don't know if I'm crazy or not, but I think left right is fake. I really do. I think that it's people against corporations.
Yes.
And I think these issues that make the left and right split, I think those are fake. I think they've found issues to exploit our voting system,
Mhm.
to make us have fear about things, and to divide us into these groups that are mad at each other, and so therefore we're not fighting the oligarchy like we should.
Yes.
And I just think I mentioned those top 15 things. Like one of them is universal child care. It's got a 90% support. And I'm not saying 90% support of the left. It's 90% support of America.
Yeah.
And it's not on any platform, by the way. It's not on nobody's platform. It's not on Republicans or
Of
Democrat
course
platform.
not. Of course not.
No.
Because it's a
So I
women's
mean,
issue.
so I say not only unite the left and the right.
Yes.
We need to come together to fight the oligarchy.
Yes.
We're being controlled by corporations, and the right doesn't want to be controlled by corporations either. They hate that.
Yeah.
So I mean, we're all on the same team.
Yeah.
We got to come together as Americans, as patriots, as American citizens who have, in our Constitution it says, let's get rid of tyranny.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get rid of tyranny.
Yes.
Because we have a voting system that's anti-democratic. Okay, I'm done with that. I've had that enough.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's where I'm coming from. I'm just, it's time.
Yes.
Now is time.
For sure. Well, thank you
Yeah.
so much for coming on the show and telling us all this great information. And I hope we can see you back again. And let's spread the good word. Let's make it happen.
Thank you so much for the opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you.